All right, so we're on our budget tab and we have a number of things going on here. I'm going to start at the big picture and we're going to kind of narrow down, and we'll also zoom in as we start building formulas. The idea here is that at time zero, we're going to start with some amount in our savings. So our ending savings balance is 2,700. We have no credit card balance to start, no credit card debt yet. So that's what we start out with in time zero. And we're going to keep track of how much we spent across those other tabs. We're going to pull that data in. And then we're also going to calculate, how much do we have over or under that gets added to or subtracted from savings. If we run out of savings, well, then we're going to have to put things on our credit card and we're going to start to accrue interest. The interest is going to accrue at an interest rate of 24% annually. Our savings, though, we're going to invest that in the stock market. And in this case, we're going to expect to earn 9% per year on that. So we'll adjust those to monthly like we've been doing. But we're going to build that so whenever we have savings, we get 9% on it. If we have credit card debt, we pay 24% on it. Credit card debt's expensive, and we'll see how that shows up here. So let's zoom in and start to build a little bit, and then we'll go ahead and copy our model and we'll look at different pieces. So our rent amount, well, we already built that out. We can just come over here and reference our rental cost in month one, and that formula is going to drag down nicely. Same with our car payment. I'm just going to each of these tabs and linking over everything that I have in month one, because when I pull this all down, it's just going to move with it and pull my data in. Now our credit card interest, this is what I was talking about, that 24%. We're going to take that 24% rate, lock that and divide it by 12, and incur it on whatever our balance was from the end of the prior month. So I'm going to move over, get the end of that. It's 0 to start. It's going to be 0 for the first year. So we're going to make sure that that all looks good. Our total spending then is just our sum across of those categories. Our income in this case, well, that's one of our parameters. So our income is going to be $2,800 a month. We'll assume this is after tax. And we're also going to assume it doesn't change at all. So we're not going to build in raises to this to make our budget as conservative as possible. Now what we're really interested in on our budgeting side is what's our surplus or our deficit. So we're going to take our income and subtract it from our total spending. So in this case, we end up with $223 extra at the end of the month. Now we got to figure out where it goes. So we're going to build a little bit of a cash flow waterfall here. So first, we got to think about where our cash goes. Well, our credit card debt's expensive. So if we have a credit card balance, the first thing we want to do is pay it down. If we don't have a credit card balance, well, then it can go to savings. So let's build up those two line items right here. So I'm going to use a couple if functions to say if I have a surplus. So if that value is greater than 0, then I want to check, do I have a credit card balance? So let's go over to my credit card balance from the previous month. If that's greater than 0, well, then what I want to pay is the minimum of however much I owe on my credit card or however much I have in my surplus. So that's where the min function comes in nice and handy. If I don't have a credit card balance, well, I'm going to pay 0. And if I don't have surplus, I can also pay 0 because I actually don't have enough money. So that if function tells me that I have $0 going to my credit card in the first month. I think that works. That makes sense since I have a surplus and I don't have any credit card debt. All right, now how much goes to savings? Whatever's left over. So here we can check, first, do I have a surplus? Is that greater than 0? If it is, well, then I can take whatever that surplus is and subtract however much went to the credit card. If I don't have a surplus, I want 0, and I build that in. So I have $223 extra this month that is going to my savings account, and we'll build that piece in just a minute. Before we do, let's actually build in what happens if we don't have enough money. If we don't have enough money, we don't want to automatically put that on the credit card. We might want to actually pull that from savings first before we resort to that high interest credit card debt. So in this case, we're going to say if we have a deficit, so if it's less than 0, then let's check, do we have a savings balance? Is our savings balance greater than 0? If it is, then we're going to pull from our savings balance. And we're going to pull either the minimum of what we owe, which in this case is going to be negative of the deficit, because the net deficit is going to be a negative number, and we want to make it positive to compare to our savings balance, or our savings balance. If we don't have savings, it's going to be 0, and if it's not a deficit, it's also going to be 0. Similar structure to what we built before. Our last line says, well, if we have a deficit and we don't have savings, then we're going to have to use our credit card. So in this case, if we have a deficit, so if that thing's less than 0, then we just want to take the deficit minus whatever we're actually putting to savings. So in this case, it's going to be a plus because we got to flip our signs around. And we'll make that 0. So we'll make sure all this works in just a second when we see some more examples as we copy our model down. Now, I'm going to make a little bit more room over here. We're going to do our beginning savings balance. So beginning savings is always going to be equal to whatever the ending was the prior month. So we can just link that to the prior month. But at the end of the month, what we're going to do is we're actually going to earn some return from our investments. So what we're going to calculate is we're going to take the beginning balance plus anything that goes into the account. So if we have any surplus to savings going in, or if we have to subtract any deficit from savings. So all the flows are going to go in and out effectively at the beginning of the month. We're then going to multiply that times 1 plus our interest rate. So, or our expected market return in this case, which we can think of as an interest rate. So we're going to lock that, make sure we divide it by 12 to make it monthly, and we see that we get a little bit of earnings on our money invested in the market. So the more we have invested in the market with that high expected return, the more we expect to accumulate over time. All right, now let me get out of the way for a second here, and let's do the same thing for our credit card balance. So for our credit card, well, in this case, it's always going to be equal to whatever it was last month. And now the ending credit card balance is going to be whatever we either added to or subtracted from the credit card. So we're going to start with our starting balance. We're going to subtract any surplus to the credit card. So if we pay it off, it makes our balance lower. But if we have some go to the credit card, well, we're going to add that on. All right, and again, we'll check to make sure we got our signs right before we finish the model up. All right, so we got zeros there, but we have our model built all the way across, so let's just take that all, Control-Shift down, Control-D to fill that thing up. And we're going to be able to start checking it once we see that we have some deficits here, and we'll see what happens. So in this case, we see a deficit of $51. We see that it does come out of savings. That makes sense. We made savings a little lower, and that's okay. As spending actually increases over time because of inflation, we see that we're using our savings account. We're actually spending it down. So we can go down here. We see that our savings are going down, and eventually we get to this month. We get to month 27 in my model, where we had enough to come out of savings. So we had some savings at the start of the month. So we pulled $207 out, but we still had some that needed to come onto the credit card. So in this case, $104.71. And in this case, it looks like I got my sign mixed up. So we need to go ahead and fix that. So I'd like this to be a positive number so everything adds to the credit card versus subtracts from it. So in this case, let's actually just take our negative of our J number, and then we want to subtract our M number. So I'm going to take that and replace it over this whole column. And that should get us going the right way. I have 104 that goes onto the credit card. And if we go to the credit card balance, we see the credit card starting to accumulate. All right. You may ask, why aren't we putting the credit card interest into this balance? Well, we are, and we're doing it indirectly. We've actually built the credit card interest over here in column G, if you recall. So that credit card interest is going to be accounted for in our total spending. So essentially, we're assuming we always pay off our interest each month. So we're not letting the interest accumulate, but we're actually maybe or maybe not making a principal payment, depending on whether we have surplus or not. So clearly, if you don't make any payment at all and the interest starts to accumulate, then you're going to pay interest on interest, and that's when credit card bills can really get out of hand. All right, so in this case, we can check our model. We see that we end up with no savings, and we end up with about $21,000 of credit card debt. Let's check that it's right, though, by going and looking at our answers. So let's go look at this. So we're going to first figure out what is our total spending in month 1. So let's just link that up. We can say equals to our total spending. And I'll come back and join you here. And then we can also do our spending for the first year. So we're just going to sum up total spending. And these questions are really built to make sure you're getting your model right as you're building it. That's how these competitions tend to work, is that you want to check your work as you're going. So here we're doing that. We're checking our work as we're going. Total surplus deficit for the first year. Let's add those across. Again, getting those 12 months all added up. and we see that everything's working out so far. Our beginning balance on savings, let's just make sure we got that right starting number. And then what about our deficit from savings? Make sure that was correct in month 7. There it is, but we actually need to flip it. The answer wants it to be negative. That's fine. If you set yours up as negative there, that's fine. You just have to make the corresponding adjustment in your accounts. All right, beginning savings balance in month 12. So let's find month 12. We'll go over to our beginning savings balance, and we get that. Now we have the kind of the first challenging question that's not just referencing the model. And that's going to be, what's the first month with a $0 ending savings balance? So what we can look for is here we can just do an XLOOKUP where we're looking for 0 in our ending savings balance column. So let's go over to ending savings balance. Notice I'm not selecting the first line because I want it to get the month. I want to get my month array to line up. And that's what I'm going to flip over to here is get my month array selected. And we see month 27 is the first place a 0 shows up. And we can actually verify that visually if we come over here. I get out of the way, and we see our first 0. There it is. We scroll over, and that's month 27. So that's what's given us the answer there. Now it wants to know what is our our deficit to credit card in that month. We should have some money going to the credit card since we've exhausted our savings. So again, we can just use an XLOOKUP. Let's look up month 27. We're going to look it up in our months, and what we want to return is our deficit to the credit card. Let's select that, and we get 104. Again, it wants it to be negative, so let's just go in and put a negative out front. Now we're matching up. Now we want to know what's the credit card interest in the next month. Again, we're just getting good at XLOOKUPs here. So we want to do the next month, so we take the month 27 plus 1. Let's look that up in our same column. This time our credit card interest, and we see $2. So credit card interest isn't bad when you have a really small balance. When the balance gets big and you don't make those payments, that's when it starts to accumulate and really get painful. And that's what we can see now with our total credit card interest because we're not able to pay it. Now we see we're paying $5,000 of credit card interest. We're ending up with a savings balance, if we go to the very end, our ending savings balance of 0, and our ending credit card balance of $21,000. So those are not great numbers if I'm looking at my own budget. I'd rather have more savings and less debt at the end of these 5 years. So on the next tab, let's see what we can do to plan for that and kind of make adjustments so we end up in a better financial position.